These are the top 10 fragrance mistakes that people make when they're new to collecting or in general. So all these tips are going to apply to anyone, no matter what stage of the journey you're on. But hopefully you catch this earlier in your journey so you don't make some mistakes that I did. The first mistake is never, ever trust the opinion of a fragrance influencer or someone that makes fragrance content online. Example, myself. You can go and scroll through my hundreds of videos, and I don't want you to take anything I said as a fact. For example, I may have made a review of a fragrance that I personally liked and I scored it high, but that does not mean that you will like that fragrance, and I hope that you understand that. Never buy a fragrance from an influencer based upon their 10% off coupon code. I hope that's self-explanatory, but what you should do, just kind of take their word as a guide. If that sounds like a fragrance that you might be interested in, write down that fragrance and then go and sample that as soon as possible to see if that's a fragrance that you actually like. And that leads me into a very important tip number 2. Never blind buy a fragrance, especially based on what those creators have said. 9 out of 10 times when you buy a fragrance and you blind buy it, you will be incredibly disappointed. Let me show you an example. I just got the new Hugo Boss bottled Absolute, and I have no idea what to expect, but I'm gonna open this right here and we're gonna find out if I like this fragrance or not. Okay, so let's spray it on my hand. Actually, it looks kind of cool. See, this is the steps that some people may take, and it might lead to success or it might lead to failure. Okay, you know what? I got incredibly lucky because this actually smells great, but nonetheless, you may not have that kind of luck. If you blind buy a fragrance, you're setting yourself up for failure, and it's a bad habit to take on. I know the thrill of a blind buy can be exciting, but trust me when I say you will end up disappointed at some point. It's just a matter of when. Also, the problem with blind buying is you've never smelt this fragrance before, so you're definitely setting yourself up for failure, especially if you bought this off of someone else's opinion. If your friend likes the fragrance, doesn't mean you will. If your mom likes it, doesn't mean you will. If I like it, who knows? Try it before you buy it. That's really good. I gotta make a video on this fragrance. Wow. The next tip is judging a fragrance too quickly based upon smelling it off a tester strip. If you go to the local mall or you're sampling a fragrance and you spray it on one of these tester strips, trust me when I say that it can smell completely different on here than it can on your own skin. If you even slightly remotely like the smell of a fragrance, when you smell it on here, try it on your skin and then just bring this home with you to remind you of a scent profile to compare it and see how it progresses. Try both skin and on tester, because you might get a completely different scent profile and you might be setting yourself up for failure if you smell something on here and don't like it. But on skin, you may. That's happened to me exactly over the course of my fragrance collecting journey. I would have been so pissed off if I didn't buy that fragrance because I ended up loving it on skin and not on tester. Don't do yourself that disservice like I did. Try it on skin. Tip number 4, or the next tip, is having false expectations when it comes to performance of your fragrance. They're not all going to be beastly, right? So if you buy a fresh fragrance, for example, that is citrus forward, you have to expect that it's not going to last as long as, let's say, a sweet cardamom vanilla fragrance. They're structurally different. Citrus notes, usually in the top especially, will wear off a lot quicker than heavier base note heavy fragrances. For example, woodier or muskier or ambroxan or these chemicals that are synthetic are going to last a lot longer on your skin than natural citrus. So you have to know what your expectation is going into it. If you have a heavy fragrance, expect it to last longer. A fresh fragrance is not going to be as beast mode or as long lasting as some of the other fragrances in your collection. So definitely set your expectations. I've seen so many people disappointed in citrus heavy fragrances or fresh fragrances because they're not the most beast mode, long lasting fragrances they've ever smelt in their entire life. And I think that setting your expectations straight on the performance before you buy a fragrance is the better way to go about it. Trust me, I've seen so many people upset over the performance of their fragrance and not actually understanding what they're getting themselves into when they buy the fragrance. Set your expectations accordingly. Tip number 5 is prioritizing the strength of the fragrance over the scent profile. I see so many people that they are in my comments and they're just like, what is the strongest, most long-lasting fragrance you own? I don't care how it smells. And I think that's such an odd way to go about fragrances. First of all, you need to enjoy the fragrance you're wearing or else it's completely pointless to wear. And secondly, if you're not using your fragrance to boost your confidence or at least make yourself feel better, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to make everyone around you not like you? Are you trying to make yourself feel sick whenever you go out and not even feel comfortable in your own skin? A fragrance is supposed to be something something that boosts your wardrobe, gives you confidence, makes you feel good when you go out. I can guarantee you this is the worst thing you can possibly do, is prioritizing the strength of a fragrance or the performance over the actual scent profile. Guys, that's one of the biggest mistakes I see a lot of people in my comment section making, and I think you're doing yourself a complete disservice. Buy based off of the scent profile first. Performance is secondary or even third in terms of what you should be buying a fragrance based on, especially if, you know, a creator has said it's beast mode. Never trust that ever. Okay, tip number 6 is never, ever, ever buy a fragrance at full retail. Go into your local rack store. You can find most fragrances 60% off, 70% off, big discounts, Ross Dress for Less, Winners in Canada, Marshalls, these types of places. You can find fragrances for insane discounts, and you can find fragrances for even bigger discounts off of fragrance discounter sites. I always have those listed in the links in my description. The main one I use is Fragrance Buy. I use Joma Shop, Perfume Online, Fragrance Net sometimes, but the shipping is very slow to Canada. I always have those listed in the description of my reviews or wherever. You will always find fragrances discounted heavily there. Never buy full retail, because sometimes you're paying what, $200 for a bottle at full retail, but you could just buy it online and wait 5 minutes and you can get like 80% off. Like, why would you ever buy full retail of a fragrance? I don't know, but if you're new to the fragrance collecting game, I totally understand. I've been there, but please take my advice when I say buy from fragrance discounters or at your local rack store instead of buying full retail. Okay, so tip number 7. This is a major one I see. Never store your fragrances incorrectly. And what do I mean by that? Always try to avoid these common mistakes, right? Never keep your fragrance in your bathroom. The humidity of the shower or the warmth in the air can definitely damage your fragrance or cause it to prematurely evaporate. Always store your fragrances in dark, cool climates. For example, this is a fragrance I like to store in my car. It's a cheapie. You can find it at your local rack store. It doesn't cost more than $5. I always store that in my center console, and then I go ahead and spray it on, and I'm like, why don't I smell anything? Or why does it smell strongly of alcohol? That's because your fragrance has been damaged. Never, ever keep a fragrance in your car. Never keep a fragrance in your washroom. The best place to store your fragrance is in a drawer, a closet, somewhere that's out of direct sunlight and in a cool climate. That's the best way to store your fragrances. Don't worry about like LED lights on your fragrances. Don't worry about the heaters in your room. It's all about the humidity and the sunlight. Don't let sunlight directly hit your fragrance, and that will actually help elongate the lifespan of your fragrance. If you look on the back of most fragrance packages, it'll say that it expires in about 3 to 4 years, right? I can tell you that's completely false. For a matter of fact, I have some fragrances in my collection I've had for more than 10 plus years. Actually, some of them almost 15 years old, and they smell exactly like when I bought them. Maybe just a little less citrus or something has kind of worn off a little bit, but mostly all fragrances that I stored correctly will last a lifetime if you store them correctly. That's another big thing that people don't do, right? If you do that, you're bound for failure, and you're probably gonna have to rebuy and wonder why it smells like shit after 2 years. Tip number 8, this is a big one. Do not have a 300 plus bottle collection unless you love this stuff, okay? The average person does not need more than one fragrance. Most fragrance influencers tell you need more so that you click their link in their bio and buy off of their affiliate link. You never need more than one. If you love it and you want to get a little bit more situational with your fragrance wearings, you can get 3, you can get 10. 300 like I have is excess. You're never going to wear half of them. You're probably never going to empty a bottle in your entire life, and most of it is just going to be wasted money. The reason I have so many fragrances is because I do this for a channel. I try to help everyone and want to give my opinions over time, but don't follow in my footsteps, because I'm not doing it the way that you should as an average consumer. Never, ever, ever try to convince yourself, because this can be addicting, right? Buying a fragrance, wearing a fragrance, smelling great, this can be very addicting, especially when it leads to positive outcomes like someone giving you a compliment. You can get very, very overboard with this very, very quickly. It can seriously become an addiction. I've seen and heard about people spending their entire life savings on fragrances. Do not do that. Luckily, I'm in a place where this isn't my only source of income, so I can afford to do this stuff and be able to give my opinions on stuff to help you guys. Trust me when I say any excess is unnecessary. Only buy what you're going to wear. Only buy what you can convince yourself that you're actually going to empty a bottle in your lifetime, because otherwise it's completely unnecessary and pointless. My 9th tip, and probably one of my most important tips, never lack situational awareness when it comes to your fragrances. For example, do not spray 55 sprays of the strongest fragrance you have and then go into your classroom and think that you're supposed to get compliments. Okay, this is gonna drive people away. Please match the situation you're in and be respectful of the people around you. For example, I was on a treadmill and I smelled Baccarat Rouge, 50 sprays on the treadmill next to me, and I'm wondering how this woman is even surviving on the treadmill, let alone myself. Do not do stuff like that, okay? Think of other people around you. Just because the fragrance smells good, you don't want to choke the person out or have them suffocate over the smell of your fragrance. fragrance. Be respectful of yourself and others. The whole point of a fragrance is to accentuate your wardrobe. What would be the point of being detected before someone even looks at you? But trust me when I say that a lot of people spray way too much, and this can lead honestly into anosmia, okay? Someone will spray 15 sprays and wonder why they don't smell the fragrance. It's because your receptors in your nose have filtered this smell out as a survival instinct. It's called being nose blind or anosmia. These are real things. The more that you spray a fragrance, the less you're actually going to be able to smell it. This is just honest truth. Anosmia is a real thing. I've had so many people tell me they cannot smell Dior Sauvage elixir after 10 minutes. And I'm like, dude, if you really want to test how strong a fragrance is, spray it as far away from your nose as possible. If you're spraying a fragrance right here, it's just going to trickle up to your nose and it's going to be filtered out after 5 seconds. You're going to wonder why you can't smell it anymore. The last tip that I want to tell you about is not understanding that everyone's skin chemistry is different. This honestly leads to one of my other points, but this is a very important thing to understand. A fragrance will smell completely different on you than it will on someone else. I've done this example by having my friend Chad from A Gentleman's Journey and my friend Rush in the same room. We've sprayed the same fragrance on all three of us and it smelled completely different on all three of us. Understand that skin chemistry in itself is unique to you. What you're smelling is unique to you, okay? A fragrance, if it smells good to someone, may not smell good to someone else, and it may not perform on your skin, and it may smell amazing on someone else's. Understanding that skin chemistry is a real thing and taking that into consideration when you're testing a fragrance is very, very important. And the next final and bonus tip for everyone, if you're not doing this final tip, well, you're doing yourself an incredible disservice, and that's not subscribing to this channel, Chad Secrets, where I give you honest advice when it comes to fragrances. I respond to every single comment, even though I get 60+ comments a day. If you ever have a comment or a question that you want to ask me, I will respond to you. So make sure you leave a comment and test me. And another bonus tip is if you want more compliments on your fragrances, and the reason that you might not be getting compliments in general is probably because you don't follow these simple steps right here. If you want more compliments on your fragrances, check out this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you over there.